Good morning, everybody. How are we doing? That good? Doing that
Good
good?
morning.
Andy, you doing good, man?
Yeah, yeah. It just feels good. It feels good to be back in business.
All
So
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good morning.
Anybody got something they want to share to get us going this Friday? This Finance Friday? If our guys are going to join us today. I don't know if we had my song ended up a little early, and I think for those of you who count on the 8:32 start time. I am in Buffalo for a hockey tournament. Hockey has no qualms about forcing you to take your kids out of school. So we are up here, and luckily we did not hit a Buffalo snowstorm, which last year was an absolute complete whiteout. So that's what I'm grateful for. We made it here in one piece in 6 hours, and it wasn't that bad. So
Steve, my
I'm also,
brother-in-law and nephew are there too.
oh yeah, this is a big tournament. It's probably my favorite one because they got a ton of outdoor rinks here. So even though we're in New England, everything that we play on our regular schedule or tournaments that we go to is all in and out in a rink. But here they're all outdoors, so you're guaranteed at least one that you're playing old school in an outdoor rink. So it's pretty cool.
What's your team?
We are the Junior Thunderbirds.
So is he. So he must be a different age because he's
Yep,
11. Yeah.
yep, yeah. So there's an 11 team. So cool. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. You should drive out and watch them.
No, that's not happening. I got my own.
All right, let's talk some real estate. No big headlines. I did get a message from Dan, who will be jumping on, so we can do Finance Friday. So what do you guys got going on your deals? Who's got something to share? Martin.
So had a land deal come together. Everything was great, hunky dory. And we find out yesterday that the listing agent did do her due diligence. Never physically met the seller, but got the driver's license, got everything. And things got a little wonky because we asked for extension because the Board of Health couldn't make the perk last week because we're supposed to close on basically yesterday. And come to find out, she got a little nervous about that because why was he getting all, upset and irate? And she called up the tax, the same person was on a tax bill and everything else. And just for the hell of it, she asked, who's paying it? Because this guy's out in California. Ends up being somebody's paying it out in South Windsor, Connecticut. She got the name, she called. She's like, yeah, I'm not selling my property. So it was basically, if we didn't have this perk, set off for a week, this deal would have gone through. And at the end of the day, there's been some serious crap going down. Maybe, I don't know if in 6 months or 6 years, but that would have been an interesting situation.
Right. So this person had, like on the sell side, the attorney had just been email communicating with the person as well.
I guess so, yes.
And so
no one caught it but the listing agent because she got a weird gut feeling.
yeah. And then and this guy would have just given his bank information and they would have wired him the funds and these land deals. I mean, we definitely, I guess I don't know. You got to be talking to people, you got to be meeting with people, and you can falsify anything now, especially with all the AI stuff. So you could easily make an ID, make a document, make whatever you want, and it's going to look darn real. So anybody else have any tips or tricks on these fake land deals of what you're doing outside of physically meeting the person? Because they can have a phone number, you can talk to them. Even if you did a Google Meet, like you don't know what this seller looks like, and they talk to you and they have all the right things. I don't know. I don't know how you prevent it. Any other thoughts on this?
I just have
So
a
this
quick
is-
question. At the end of the day, let's just say this went through and like what are the repercussions mean? Like as a realtor, as you know, Roe v. Real, like what's like who's really responsible at the end of the day as you know, whose fault it is? Because of course there I'm sure someone will be suing somebody.
yeah,
But I guess that's my question is.
yeah. I mean, if as long as you again did your due diligence, I mean, they can sue whoever they want. You know, we I feel like most of the lawsuits that I've been involved in over 18 years that I've been doing this, it didn't feel like our agent did anything wrong. But anybody can sue anybody for anything, and once they do that, now you've got to get representation, and it starts to cost you money. So you could be as as clear, in the clear as you think. I did everything I possibly could. You could still get drawn into that lawsuit. So yeah, I don't. There's I don't want to say you're safe in these scenarios. Um, So I don't know if anybody else has anything to add, but that's been my experience. So you just got to cross your T's, dot your I's for these types of scenarios, and when your gut says this just feels a little off, I think you got to go down that path. Any other scams that people want to talk about besides the land stuff or something that happened that would be a good share? All right, did Dan join us? Oh, go ahead, Lauren.
We've had a couple instances now, and they seem to target newest agents, where it is a direct reach out. They say, "Hey, I found your information online. I want to buy this $1 million property." We haven't had one get like too far to close yet, so I'm not sure how on the buy side they're trying to scam out of money, but we've had it happen 3 or 4 times last year, all to newer agents, all at or over that $1 million price point where it's a buyer, they send proof of funds and the ID and everything same side. So just cautious there. If somebody's reaching out to you, wants to communicate via WhatsApp, if it seems too good to be true, it
Yeah.
usually is.
Yeah, and in the situation, the most recent one, I actually talked to our agent. It's just if high-end buyers don't just randomly find somebody and I bought multiple properties, I've done this over and over in the market, don't worry about it, like blah. They would be using some of those same agents. They wouldn't just be randomly reaching out. So we've really got to be careful with that when they're not wanting to meet in person, they're not wanting to get on a FaceTime or something like that. And like Lauren said, it does seem to be like a new agent, so that they go, oh wow, I can get my first $1 million deal, and so now you start to do things that a veteran probably would start to sniff out. So just be careful. Tracy.
Yeah, I had one of these a couple of years ago, actually. It was the weirdest thing. I had somebody reach out to me out of the blue. He kept saying, okay, well, I'm going to purchase this property. Sending you a check. I'm sending you a check. I'm like, okay, well, all right. Send it to my attorney. So I had to send it to Kathy Kelly, and she's like, yeah, I'm like, this is so funny. I don't know, Kathy. She's like, yeah, this is fraud. So I was like, thank you. I needed a second set of eyes on it. And I'm just like, it was just so random. And it was during COVID. So, of course, like everyone
Yeah,
was doing all kinds of weird things then.
we got to be really extra careful because the AI stuff can clone the voice, it can clone them as on video, it can clone the documents, it can pretty much clone whatever you want at this point. And it's only going to get faster and easier for these guys. So just really push the face-to-face stuff. I mean, I was playing around with a voice cloning thing. It needs 30 seconds. So they could, if you did something on Instagram, right? 30 seconds or longer, they can download that clip, they can upload it to a voice cloning, and it sounds darn close to your voice. So, the scams of, grandma calling the grandchild for funds are going to start to happen, and it's going to be grandma's voice. So just be careful. Dan, you hopped on. Did you want to jump in? Anything for Finance Friday? Weird things that you're seeing? Advice for the agents?
Yeah, hey, good morning, guys. Yeah, I mean, some crazy stories you got going on today as far as on the fraud side of things. We on our end obviously come across some similar situations as well. As far as the fake sellers and stuff like that, I haven't personally had anything come across, and I guess we're on the right track there. Just kind of talking about doing our own due diligence, and hopefully the attorneys. I feel like that one I jumped on kind of towards the tail end of the first example, or maybe it wasn't the first example. About the lady out in California who said she wasn't actually selling the house. So, you'd hope that something like that could get caught when they get to, before they get to the closing. But yeah, crazy stuff going on right now with all the AI for sure.
And I want you guys to understand, it's not just like they can just take a document. Like if somehow they got their hands on a set of documents, it would be as easy as throwing the entire set of documents in and just saying, all right, change the name on all of these to this. I mean, it is that simple at this point. Here's a full set of docs, change the name and address to this.
Right. And in 99% of cases, though, we're doing in-person closings. We do have, sometimes you'll have a situation where they have a power of attorney, and hopefully the due diligence was done when that power of attorney was notarized to make sure that that's all legit. And a lot of times the attorneys that we close with, if they are going to do a power of attorney, they're not going to take one that's already done. They want it specifically done for their transaction. So yeah, there are a lot of safeguards in place, and throughout the underwriting process, we're trying to check for fraud. We run what we call literally a fraud report that on every borrower that we take a loan application for when we're in underwriting, that tries to basically cross-reference everything on our application, all of our information about them, properties they may have owned, jobs they may have had, perhaps judgments against them, things like that might not be showing on the credit report, but to again do our due diligence to make sure that we do know who we're lending to.
Any finance questions, guys, for Dan? Adam.
Hey, good morning. Two-part question here. My first question would be, rates are in the, low sevens, I think, roughly. So I'm just curious if there's any kind of creative things we're doing. Is it still the 2-to-1 buy down, or, what's the best way to use a seller? If your seller says, hey, I'm willing to throw $10,000 towards the buyer, what can we be suggesting that the buyer consider doing on the finance side? And then two, I just need some clarification on what the kind of final ruling was at NAR. Obviously, we can't go and advertise buyer compensation, but is there anything that prevents us from talking about closing costs or anything like that? Because I think there's some potential that when you say that, you could be talking about helping out the agent with the buyer's closing costs. So I just wanted some clarification on what we're allowed to post in public remarks if we're trying to promote seller closing costs.
Got it.
So let me just take the second part, Dan. So it's just putting stuff in MLS, Adam. Right? So you can do any other marketing that you want. You just can't put it in the MLS.
So just to clarify, I when you say in the MLS, you're talking about not the agent only section, public remarks.
Anything in the MLS. Do not put anything in the MLS. If it's an inputted field into the MLS, don't put it in there, period.
So a statement at the end of a public remarks that says seller willing to give $10,000 towards buyer's closing costs is, quote unquote illegal, correct? No, because that is, I mean, that's not my understanding. I don't know if somebody else heard something different, but that's a closing cost. That is not, it's the commission stuff that we can't do. You can still do. You can interpret that as being able to help with the buyers. But the buyers needs to pay the agent. But I just want to make that distinction specifically of buyers closing costs versus seller willing to pay for agent buyer commission.
Yeah, I don't think, Linda, you got your hand up. I'm not aware of anything that would prevent that. And I could be misremembering something. So if somebody wants to jump in, but
Yeah, so you're totally fine, Adam. If the seller wants to offer the buyer a closing cost credit, that can be posted in the MLS because that is an incentive for the buyer. If the buyer then uses that credit at their discretion to pay their agent's commission, that's entirely their prerogative. But the offer in the MLS is an incentive for the buyer, not for the buyer's agent. So what happens behind the scenes is not on us. So you can certainly post in the MLS in the public comments that because especially down here in Florida where we've got these new construction places that can offer to pay for the buyer's closing costs and all these other incentives. In order for us with resale to have any competition in that regard, we have to be able to offer our buyers something. I've seen it, seller willing to pay 1 year, prepay 1 year of HOA dues. That's going to the buyer. So anything that's going to benefit the buyer can be clearly stated. Again, if the buyer behind the scenes decides to use those funds in some way to help out their agent, that's up to them.
Okay, perfect. And that's exactly where I'm going with this is, we've got a listing coming on that's competing with new construction, and the buyers need to know that the seller's willing to help them just like the new construction will. And that's kind of the second part to my question on the interest rate too, is how do we come close to competing with, I just had a buyer get 4.5% interest rate on a new construction loan. So I'm just curious what kind of games we can play both in Florida and Mass in terms of helping the buyer get some kind of finance deal.
Yeah, I'd love to hear something creative that we could do to combat the 7% interest rate, because that crushes us when these new construction people can give such low rates.
Yeah, so we definitely still can do these buy down programs, and you had mentioned, Adam, a 2-1 buy down, which gets them 2% off their rate the first year and then 1% off their rate on the second year. But it can also be structured as simply a 1-year buy down where you get 1% off for 1 year, or it can go all the way to the extent of doing a 3-2-1 buy down, which might be something like that person that you said was able to get to a 4.5% to start, where it gets them down 3% the first year, 2% the second, and 1% in the third year before adjusting back to what is still a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. So it's a temporary buy down that would reduce that. So to structure and finance something like that, it typically, from a seller credit standpoint, they can offer a credit that can be used to fund the buy down program for the buyer. The cost of it is really going to vary a little bit depending on the particular loan program, how much the buyer is putting down. If they're doing an FHA loan where they're putting down a minimal down payment and they're financing most of it, then you're looking at a higher loan amount. So your buy down money is you're going to need more funds for the buy down. Whereas if they're only, say they're putting down 20%, now you're talking about a little bit of a lesser amount. So that factors into it. As a rule of thumb, a 1-year buy down is going to cost around 75 basis points in cost, meaning 0.75% of the loan amount itself. So if we're talking about an example of a $400,000 loan, or say a $400,000 listing, right? And you've got a buyer that's coming in, say it's a first-time buyer getting an FHA loan, their overall mortgage amount is going to be very close to $400,000. It'll be just a little bit less. So in that case, a 1-year buy down is going to cost somewhere around $3,000. So in that scenario, what it would be doing, that $3,000 over the course of 1 year is going to reduce their payment by somewhere around $250 a month in that example. So it does become a lot more expensive when you start going to a 2 or a 3 year buy down option, because the savings is increasing in those years as well, but now the funding needed for it increases. So if we were saving $250 a month in year 1, we might be saving or with the 1% off, if we're saving $250, with 2% off, we might be saving around $500 a month. So now with $500 a month, that's $6,000 over the course of a year. So now you would need $9,000, somewhere in that range, to do a 2 year buy down. And then to get it all the way to a 3 year, now they're saving, say, $750 a month. So that's $9,000. You're talking about $18,000 in total to get like a 3-2-1 buy down on an example, something like that, of around $400,000 purchase. So on an FHA loan, you are allowed to give a concession of up to 6% of the purchase price. So you, in that example, you would be able to have enough funds to do it if you were to offer it. And obviously, it's got to be built into your contract. It has to appraise at the purchase price above, what that credit is being offered and everything too. But that's definitely something that you could do. We do try to structure offers like that in some cases, and definitely from a listing standpoint, if you wanted to offer a buy down to a potential buyer, then yeah, that's something that would definitely be a good creative option to help them to get a lower payment right away. And by doing it that way, you can kind of show them, say, hey, listen, more than just giving you, a few $1,000s off at your closing or giving you a credit, we're actually going to offer to contribute this towards your interest rate and save you money over the next year or 2 or 3, however we decide to structure it.
Thanks, Dan. Jen?
Hey, so I wanted to reply to Adam's question. Now I know you're in Florida, so can you guys hear me okay? Because I'm on my car. My car picked up my
Yeah,
phone.
you're good. You're
okay.
good.
So I know you're in Florida, so I don't know if it's the same, but I did speak to the mass broker, Jeff, about actually this very question about how if the buyer is going to pay their agent, how that would work. And I suggested closing costs, and he said actually would not be considered closing costs. They could say, the way he said it was, the buyer, the seller, they would ask the seller to pay it, but the purchase price would just be higher. So that it's not closing costs. They offer a purchase price, over asking to include basically the amount. But then the seller pays it. So he structures it like that.
It's just the seller paying the buyer's agent's commission.
But not as a closing cost. It just would increase the purchase price.
Yeah. I wasn't sure about that part, but that kind of makes sense. Like it's I don't think it's considered, one of the closing cost categories. I don't know, Dan, if you could verify that, right? If you've got up to 6% in closing costs, is that knocking that down?
If the seller is paying the commission directly to the buyer's agent, then that's not a closing cost credit for us. So like that wouldn't count towards the 6%. Towards the 6% interested party contribution. That's just the agents paying a commission to each other.
Yeah. So then in addition to that, you could have the seller pay the buyer's agent and offer the concession to buy down the rate.
Yeah, but keep in mind too that the max concession that you can get will depend on the loan type. An FHA loan, we said you can get up to 6%. A VA loan, you can get up to 4%. And on a conventional loan, it depends on the down payment amount. I think we actually might have put something in the lender chat maybe a few months back with a kind of cheat sheet on the interested party contributions that you're allowed to, depending on the loan program and down payment, et cetera. I can make sure that that's in that lender chat too, so you guys have an easy reference for it.
Great point, Jen. Good questions, Adam. Lauren.
Just wanted to follow up kind of what Jen was saying. That is not the only way that a buyer can pay you directly, right? So it doesn't have to be structured as coming from the seller side when it is your buyer paying it. So you can just have it as a separate item that the attorneys handle. Always recommending, if that is the case where a buyer is paying a buyer agent directly, not required, but recommended, that we have just a blank addendum letting our buyers know exactly how much they will be paying us for that specific transaction, signed just between buyer agent and buyer, so that the attorneys have that it's on record, that everybody understands going into the transaction, and it's not a surprise later.
Do we have a form for that, Lauren, that we've already kind of created? Because you're talking about in addition to a buyer's agreement that says this is what you're going to owe me, because the buyer's agreement doesn't specify who's doing the paying. You're just saying, once we've got the deal structured, let's get something specific that says, hey, seller's paying it, buyer's paying it, or it's a combination of the two.
Yeah, so we're only utilizing this, like I said, when it is the buyer paying. We do not have an actual form. I've been recommending everybody just use, like I said, a blank addendum. And I've been giving them the verbiage. I should probably at this point get something into clauses to consider so that they can just copy and paste it. So I don't have to keep sending it to everybody. But just that way, so it's transparent, right? Even if it's just a portion of it, if it's all of it, that way they are aware and we have it on paper. Can't be questioned at close, like, hey, you said they weren't paying, but you never like informed me that did mean I was, like, that we never talked about it. So just like seeing it in writing ahead of time. So I'll work on that.
Yep, that would be great. Chris.
We've been structuring that right into the purchase and sale contracts. So when the contracts are being written up, it's specifically stating who's getting paid by whom and how much. So even when it is just the buyer. So you know what I'm saying? And then it's right
so
there.
These are getting into purchase and sale. But we had somebody already like question it, right? So it got to purchase and then they're like, we didn't talk about this, right? Like I accepted the offer. You never like brought it up. So yes, they are. Then you're right. That's kind of like the next step, Chris, using it to put in purchase and sale.
Yeah, I mean, it can go directly in. It can be an addendum to the purchase and sale. I don't, as long as it's part of that purchase and sale document when it gets signed. So either way, I think we're good.
I think that, just real quick, sorry, plays into the fact of we as agents need to read these purchase and sales and make sure that information in them is correct, especially with this new additional step in there. Don't just send them off for signatures.
All right, we are up against it. Anybody have just a final thing they need help with? You got a weird scenario, need some quick guidance. All right, let me just pull up. Let's see what we got available for training today. Our Players Agent Mastermind. We haven't seen that. Let's see what that is all about. This mastermind is designed to help you grow your real estate business, increase your sales, and build a strong network of clients and partners with tactical strategies that can be implemented immediately, combined with a comprehensive Q&A. So this sounds like, you're expanding that network like we talk about, like lenders, attorneys, CPAs, contractors. I think that's my guess of what that is helping you out. Real Estate Mastery Mastermind, an attraction mastermind, how to deliver a 5-star buyer presentation. So if you're looking for just some feedback on what you might be able to do up your buyer presentation game, mastering the art of seller services, and that's it. Is it for training. So go have yourselves a great weekend. And actually, with Monday being a holiday, we will take Monday off. We will be back at it on Tuesday. All right. Appreciate you guys. Have a good one. Bye.
You too. Bye.